Welcome to Tattooed Freaks in Business Suits, recorded live at the Personal Touch Career Services in Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Donna Shannon, and as a professional career coach, I help people navigate the hiring maze to get to the jobs they really love. So yeah, it's true, the world of the work in the U.S. is changing, especially as Gen X, millennials, and those to come after us seek positions of leadership that still allow them to be themselves. So our show's purpose is to address some of these evolutions and what that means for your own career. And of course, we're going to talk about tattoos. Our sponsor is the Personal Touch Career Services. We're Denver's top-rated career coaches. Check out our signature Down and Dirty job search program, along with all of our resume packages at our ridiculously long website, which is personaltouchcareerservices.com. Once again, that's personaltouchcareerservices.com, or you can just Google it. So we do have a special guest with us today. I am joined by Kylie Dunkley. So Kylie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Hey, Donna, thanks for having me. I am a co-founder of Allboarder, which is a startup focused on automating repetitive calendaring to help teams streamline their process. My background is in UX or product design, and that's because I fell in love with people, which sounds kind of silly when you say it, but I genuinely love people and want to help them, which is why I do what I do. I love building tools that help make people's lives easier. My background, like I said, is in design. And a year ago, a friend and I got together and started our own company, Allboarder, which, like I said, templatizes goals, events, and tasks. These templates allow key players to collaborate on the employee onboarding experience.
All right. And so why did I know you just said you got involved in all of this because you really love people and helping them out. So was there anything else on your journey for establishing your own business?
Yeah. Well, when I looked back at my, decade plus of experience, I saw a direct correlation between my success at a company and how I was onboarded. And not just at the company level, but how I was onboarded into my role. Unfortunately, most companies just stop at the welcome to Acme, if you will. And they don't really get into that personalized role training. It's often due to hiring managers not being trained or frankly, not even having the time to maintain role specific onboarding. This means people are often guessing what success looks like, and it just takes them longer to get to that productivity that they need to be at.
Yeah, I think all of us at one point in our lives had a job that started and you're sitting around for the first 2 days, kind of twiddling your thumbs because it's all right, we got your HR paperwork. IT has not set up your email yet. Your computer's not ready to go. And these kind of the things that you're seeing as companies struggling with their onboarding process.
Yeah, I mean, that first day is crucial. It really is the first impression that these people have outside of their interviewing experience. And I think we've all been there where you're show up and you're I don't know what I'm supposed to do, especially if you work from home or you're remote to the rest of the company. You're just kind of oh, can I get in? I'm ready to start. And it just doesn't feel like they're ready for you.
Right. So how do you think all this onboarding helps with the new hire's success?
Well, there's been tons of studies done to show that organizations with a strong onboarding experience improve new hire retention by 82% and productivity by 70%. So your onboarding directly relates to your new hire's success.
So is it ever too late to onboard an employee? So for example, they've already been here for a month, but they still don't know the critical functions. My background's in HR, so I immediately go to, they're not sure how the payroll is getting processed or how to sign up their benefits or how to access HR for other questions.
Yeah. Onboarding isn't necessarily a 1 week thing. It's not a one and done. It should be a continual learning process. But if a new hire still lacks critical knowledge to their role, especially after a month time of being at the company, it's important to reassess their onboarding experience and where they are in this process, and also like what resources were provided. I know in past companies and just research in general, having some sort of Slack or Teams channel where they can go to ask these important questions is crucial. And then also having that connection with their manager and having that manager be able to onboard them and kind of correct as needed is huge. Addressing these gaps with targeted training and support doesn't just help them catch up, but also improves their confidence and productivity moving forward, which ultimately ensures that they're set up for success.
Yeah, I think another thing too is sometimes, especially in remote environments, people don't feel comfortable asking questions.
Yeah, I feel like in those situations, you kind of have to, I maybe dramatic's not the right word, but be a little over dramatic in how you show that people can just ask questions. One of the companies in my background that I worked with, uh, they just kind of were a little tongue in cheek with like, here, ask here. And there's no such thing as a dumb question. They never felt bad. And because they kind of set that standard from day one, people would not be ashamed to be like, I don't know what this is. Can someone educate me? And there was no fear mongering or anything like that. Like people were just very open about it. And because they created that culture of communication, they were able to like increase the awareness of this channel and this ability to ask questions and not feel stupid.
Right. So let's talk about kind of like the employee's own personal responsibility in this,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if they did not get a good onboarding process, how can they improve their own success?
Yeah. The employee can only do so much at the end of the day, right? And I think things that they can do is seek out resources, reaching out to coworkers or reaching out internally to try and learn the things that, especially like the basic things like your payroll, things like that. But when it comes to role specific things, that's like creating regular check-ins with your manager, or if is there someone else who has your role but maybe in a different team or different department, can you clarify with them? And it's really up to them to like learn and reach out and gather as much information as they can and adapt. But all that being said, at the end of the day, it's still up to the manager and the HR team. And if they don't provide a solid onboarding experience, if someone doesn't get that and doesn't get help even after doing all of those things, the likelihood of success at the company is not high. These people are more likely to move on. And I mean, I I'm such a nerd about this. I get all into stats and things like this. And there's literally statistics. 72% of employees report that one-on-one time with their direct manager is crucial to good onboarding.
Mm.
So it's kind of a weird thing. As we were building Allboarder and we were doing all this research and, my background in product design, love human-centered design, love to talk to people and hear where their need is. It's almost like a disconnect between HR and the employee because there's a hiring manager and the team, and those people really can make or break the experience because HR can have a wonderful onboarding experience at that company level, like the Acme, if you will, area. But when you get into the role, it can really break down. And if they're not getting that one-on-one time with the manager, they're not getting that time to say, hey, where am I? What does success look like? And having those clear guidelines, like it's probably not going to go very well. And negative onboarding experience can make new hires 2 times as likely to look out for other jobs in the future. Even if they're like, I love the company, but if the experience wasn't there, the likelihood of them staying very long is not there either.
Right. I mean, we see that all the time because we have people contact us, of course, when they're ready to look for a job. And especially when we had like the great regret happening a couple of years ago, there were so many people that just kind of jumped ship because they were getting enticed to these other companies only to get in there and go, oh, I don't enjoy working with this manager or this company, or I don't feel comfortable here. And then they immediately start to look for another job, even though they've only been there for a few months.
Yeah, I feel like that's like exactly it.
Mhm. And we're not talking about like, oh, awful boss, like thinking of somebody yelling and screaming at you or anything like that. And I know this is one thing I have to look out for in my own behavior because I do have staff, is I don't like being a micromanager. But I do have some high standards, and I try to empower my team to like take initiative. Here's your training going into things. And there's like this delicate balance of a manager between we need to make sure that we're following our procedures, things are doing what they're needing to do, versus giving you autonomy and letting you work. I hate being put in a position where I have to lord over somebody to make sure they're doing their job.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the place to be. The one thing I would say, and it's kind of a motto I live by, which is like clarity is kindness.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as you're giving people clear guidelines of what success looks like and allowing them to get there, I think that's all you can do, right? You're saying, hey, in order to be successful in your role, you need to do A, B, and C. And how they do A, B, and C, as long as they're doing it, that should be success, right? Where I've seen some managers be like, well, you need to figure it out, and you're like, that's not actually helpful. Someone needs to train this manager that that's not the way to go.
Right, right. And there's also like what I would call trust but verify.
Mhm.
So it may seem like a real control freak move that, oh, the first couple of weeks here, send me an email, let me know what you got accomplished
Yeah.
today so I can see if you're moving in the right direction or not, and we can course correct early.
I think that's the way to go. That first, 30, 60, 90 is a common phrase. I feel like, at least in tech, where you set up these expectations of what you should expect that first 30 days, that first 60 days, and that first 90 days. And there is a little bit more of that hand holding, because if you do that training early on, the person's likelihood of being successful later on is much higher. And so you're doing a little bit more. I don't even want to call it micromanaging. You're just a little bit more in the details to make sure they're where they need to be. So at month 4, 5, and 6, or whatever later on, you don't need to be in the details as much because there's already that trust, because you verified it, to your point, trust but verify. And you can kind of help the person really guide them the way they need to be.
Yeah, and it is relationship building too, especially for our remote employees. And
Yeah.
there's so many people who come to us because they're looking for jobs that are remote or hybrid, but
Mhm.
you really have to take some of your success both in your hands as well as on the company side to build a relationship and a rapport with your new manager so that you are comfortable reaching out if you've got questions or if you're just not sure if you're doing things right.
No, I agree, especially when it comes to remote onboarding. My background's in tech, so I've worked at a lot of companies where I've been the remote employee, and that onboarding experience starts before day one, and I think that's something that people kind of talk about, but it's not necessarily like, oh, we need to do this. When we were doing all this research for Allboarder, we talked to people in various roles, and the one of many consensuses were the the process before day one was huge. Meaning not just like it's the day between you accepted, you signed, and your day one, that in between period, whether it's a week, couple weeks, a month, depending on the company, how the company and their employees reach out to that new hire is really crucial. One
Hmm.
thing that we saw for success is uh, having your direct manager and your team reach out to you, if like DM you on LinkedIn, or if you've been contacting already with your manager, emailing you, having that connection, you're already in the process of building that community. Another huge thing we saw is a lot of companies, especially in tech, will send out like a swag box, like the stuff we all get, right? But having some personalization to that took it like a whole level above, which is so silly. How long does it take to write like a note saying, hey, Donna, we're so happy to have you, and sending them, maybe it's like your team's little swag item. Maybe it's a sticker, something so little, but that note in that swag box just takes it to a much more personal level. It's not just Acme sending you this, like it's just standard. It's personalized and it makes you feel wanted. And that onboarding experience, like the more you feel wanted and welcomed and that they're ready for you, the more grace that new hire is going to have for them. When maybe day one, they're like, oh, sorry, there was an internet issue and your email's not working. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things like that you build trust before you even start on that first day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like those first days of school. I always hated the first day of school because every single class was all like, here's our agenda, our itinerary, syllabus, or whatever it is for the class. We're just going to talk about our expectations. This is the book. And it was always so boring. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why like having those connections before, whether it's, the messages on LinkedIn or via email, that note in the swag box, it makes going through that first day of syllabus things, the things that you have to do, you have to do, you have to have your ID checked, all those things. You're just like, okay, but when can I actually go to work? And you get excited and it'll help you, at least the new hires, kind of have more patience through that process. Because usually you're like, okay, I know I need to do this, but I'm really excited. Like I signed with this company because I wanted to work on X or I wanted to do these things. And so I'm going to get through this part and enjoy that experience. And what's interesting is like the stats are there, organizations that have excellent onboarding processes are show an increased 52% retention rate of employees. Like the numbers don't lie. You can look at the qualitative and quantitative and the story is the same. Onboarding is super important.
Sure. Okay. So now let's get into the other side of things. When it is time to let employees go. And this is actually what brought me to you because I got to see you present at Disrupt HR on your topic of you're firing me. So
yeah.
Why don't you tell me just a little bit more about that whole offboarding process?
So when it comes to offboarding, there's really and generally speaking, I should say, 3 ways people leave a company. They leave by their choice, right? And there's many reasons someone might leave by their choice, but they leave on their own. They're part of a layoff or they're fired. And when it comes to leaving by their choice, I mean, there's so many things that we can do, but I feel like that's never usually the problem at that point. They're already on their way out. But when it comes to being fired or being part of a layoff, that's really where we can see some differences. So I can get all in the details for you, but when it comes to firing, there's kind of 2 subcategories. It's one person did something horrible, like punch someone in the face. And, those are things that where you're like, okay, you didn't live by this code of conduct of being a normal person and being human. So you have to be fired. And it goes back to that clarity is kindness. That's a huge phrase I've mentioned before, but being able to say, hey, we don't do this. We don't do this. So this is why you now have to leave immediately. And then the other category is someone's maybe not living up to what we thought success looked like for this role. And that's where I always encourage people to be put on a performance improvement plan. You're giving them that clarity is kindness. Like, hey, if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, there's so many things that could be happening. They could very well not know that they're not doing what they're not supposed to do, or what they're supposed to be doing and things like that. So creating a clear performance improvement plan or PIP and being able to say, this is what success looks like, being very clear in this. And then at that point, if they don't live up to that PIP, then it's you let them go and you say, hey, we made this agreement. You didn't honor your side of the agreement. And so naturally, this is the consequence. Where when you go to layoffs are a whole bag of worms in itself. And especially in this market, at least in tech, we're seeing layoffs like no other. And there's just not a lot of empathy, I believe, in those experiences. I think people know how to fire someone really well, but when it comes to layoffs, we have companies saying that they were low performers and you're like, were they? Because I feel like if you're laying off a bunch of people, that's probably a reflection on the CEO or, the executive team more than it is on the actual individuals being let go.
Right. Right. So, how would compassion come into play, especially in these layoff situations?
Yeah. Uh, Layoffs usually could be from like an employee perspective. Sometimes these layoffs are being spoken about like, oh, hey, you hear a whisper of a thing. So sometimes there's a little bit of this might happen, but I feel like more often than not, the person actually being let go is usually kind of blindsided by it. These aren't, like I said, these aren't the people who were punching someone in the face, who weren't, not performing their job. It just happened. And they were the ones who got cut, unfortunately. And in this case, it really does come down to empathy, recognizing that they're probably going to be blindsided. We really need to leave them with their dignity and honor the work that they have done. So, as you mentioned in my talk at Disrupt HR this past spring, I spoke about how we can better lay people off, where we just give them the time to process, honor the work they are doing, and provide opportunities for them to stay in touch with their fellow people. So, for example, a lot of companies I've seen a few companies, I shouldn't say a lot, like a few companies have created like an alumni Slack channel where people can reach out and connect with their team, even though they might have been shut off. Like an example, we spoke to someone. Hold on 1 second. I have to think if I can say this. We spoke to someone in the FANG category, if I say that, like a bigger company that used internal tooling to message and communicate. And when they were let go, unfortunately, all that communication was shut off. So they no longer had a way to connect with their coworkers. And especially as a remote employee on a remote team, you're talking to people potentially around the world that you no longer have connections with. And that can be really, really hard and dramatic and trauma inducing for these individuals. I think another way to build empathy is to be really thoughtful in your layoff process. Another thing we saw is that people were getting emails to their professional email, so like at acme.com, and being told that they are being let go, and all the details of what that meant. But then they were immediately shut off. So they saw the layoff email and then no longer had access to any of that information. And so it's really important to be mindful of, hey, are we sending this to both their professional and personal email? What information are we giving them? How much time do we give them where they still have access? The unfortunate thing with layoffs is, like I said, these aren't underperforming people. These are people who are doing their job, and genuinely people just love their work, and they are passionate about what they're doing, and they genuinely care. And so there's no opportunity for them to like leave a note to say, hey, this is where I ended, or you know what I mean, like clean off, like maybe they need something for a portfolio piece, and not that they're going to steal any major information, but there's no like view only aspect. It's just you're out, and that can be really dramatic and trauma inducing for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just like you mentioned, there's the whole blindsiding thing. It's like, even though the rumor mill is saying that there's layoffs that are going to be coming down the pipe, there's still the whole, it's just like a psychological trick. Oh, this can't happen to me.
Yeah.
Or that just denial that, sure, everybody else is being let go, but maybe I'll skate by because all my work was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's oftentimes not the case in what the decision factors are for people who are being laid off.
Yeah. It's really, like, I keep saying this, but it's really trauma inducing for people. It's like I said, last summer, I spoke to a bunch of people from HR to managers to employees who were recently onboarded or offboarded, and focusing on the offboarding experience, specifically in layoff. There's so much doubt that goes through these employees' minds of like, wait, did I do something wrong? What was this? And even though it's a quote layoff, like they don't necessarily, they're still concerned, where there's things like the employers can do to really ease that trauma. One of the things is stating, hey, these people were part of a layoff, recognizing to the entire company that this is not a performance issue on these people's part, but a company level situation. And then also like honoring the work they did. One of the companies I know really well, they did a layoff, and in their internal, Slack's like the main tech tool. So I keep referencing that, but like in their internal communications, they were like, oh, we appreciate so and so and the work they did on this project, and like kind of giving some details. So that way they provided like internally an opportunity to show, hey, this person's doing really great work. And then also sharing ways to communicate with them. Here's their LinkedIn, here's their number, whatever that employee is comfortable sharing. But that way that bridge is not gone. You know what I mean? You're still able to communicate with your team and chat with them. And, just sometimes I've had people tell me that they had their team members reach out to be like, hey, I cannot find this. Do you know anything about it? And if they happen to remember, they can. There's obviously no obligation, but people genuinely care about the work they're doing and their team. So when a team member is like, hey, I'm kind of stuck on this, do you know anything about it? They could share some of that. And that's kind of goes into like the time that we give people before they're like cut off, giving them time to wrap things up or document, where things are, or things like that, like giving them time to like literally share their internal knowledge, whether with another coworker or documenting it in a form or things like that. Like those are going to be really helpful for the future of the team. Because I think people talk about layoffs and they forget that it actually hurts the team's productivity too. You're losing a key member, and unless you're expecting on leaving, you usually don't document all this like random little, the additions and subtractions versus like the multiplications are usually documented, like the bigger things, but those little things are usually stuck in people's brains.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also a very different attitude. Hey, you're still allowed to interact with your team. We would love your institutional knowledge of what's going on, versus old school philosophy HR, where we're going to let everybody go on a Friday afternoon. And if we need to escort people out of the building or whatever the case may be, just to so they don't make a scene, it's a very different mentality. Even when there's just layoffs, it's not like somebody being let go for performance.
Yeah. No, exactly. It's funny talking to HR people about it too, and how HR really tries to be compassionate, but I think at the end of the day, there's just a lot of I don't know if it's like middle management or executive management that's like, hey, these people need to go and you just need to do it this way. And it's like people at the top really need to listen to this and put themselves in that individual contributor or that employee who's leaving's shoes and recognize, maybe this is not the best experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just like with outplacement services that are provided, we do outplacement too. So, the company may hire us as they're doing layoffs to help the employees transition to their next role.
Yeah, and that is huge.
Yeah. So here's the funny statistics. I don't have the exact numbers like you do, but by and large, the people who are most often offered the most beneficial packages for outplacement are the executive team. So they may get a lot more hours, the actual resume written, time with the, career coach, all the rest of these things. And it's proven time and again, those are the people who need the least amount of help when it comes to the job search, because they already have a robust network of other executives, things like this. The people who actually need outplacement the most are anybody who are like mid-career or early management levels, and certainly the entry-level people. And just because of cost factors, if they're offered any outplacement services, what it is most often is they get 2 or 3 hours to talk to a coach. The coach will review the resume. They say, change this, and then they might take another look at it. And then that's it. That's it.
And that's like such a horrible experience. Those, like you said, those are the people that need it the most. And qualitatively talking to a bunch of people, sometimes they're not even like I said, they're not even given the information to those services.
Yeah.
They're told, hey, we have this for you. And all of that's hidden behind the closed door of you are now an ex-employee. And I think that's part of that clarity. We need to share with the employees being like, oh, here's all the information. Here's all the resources. And to those management people making that decision, hey, let's provide them opportunities. Like I spoke to a person who was here on a work visa and they were trying to figure out from their now ex-employer what that meant for them. You know, they were in America on a work visa and those things aren't easy. And so now they're like, okay, wait, do I have to move? Like, this is a life-changing thing. You know, this is not just like, oh, I no longer have a job, but I'm okay. It's like, I might have to go home to my home country. So like having those services to help them find work, those are crucial, like truly critical for these visa employees.
Yeah.
Among everyone else, but still.
Right. But there's always those unusual questions that come up. And depending on who you're talking to, a job searching expert, you may get different opinions. Like I was speaking to a potential client the other day, and he had already paid a resume writing service to go through it, which he wasn't too happy with. And he had received some of the outplacement counseling side of things. So he had like 2 or 3 sessions with one of the big national firms. And then he also went to his local workforce center. So he was tapping into the government resources. And lo and behold, all 3 had different opinions about what he should be doing for his job search.
That's so hard.
Yeah.
I keep going back to clarity's kindness. So whatever we can do to help provide these people, here's clear direction, you know, and working with trusted individuals. Yeah. You can really tell when people care. And I think that's something, you know, in talking with you, Donna, and your company, it's clear that you guys care about the people you're working with. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. All right. So now we get to go to my favorite part of the show where we get to talk about the tattoo of the day. But Kylie, you don't have a tattoo, do you?
I don't. I can never pick one. I know. I've always talked about getting one, but as a designer, my style has changed over the years. I don't think I could commit to having something on me. I do, however, have a helix piercing, and it's like one of my favorite things that I've ever done.
So for those of you who are listening at home who may not know, what is a helix piercing?
My helix piercing is like the top part of your ear where it like kind of curves. Is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It's just a little piercing. I have a little gem and it looks like a little starburst coming out of my ear, which I love. Not the candy, like a sunburst kind of a thing. Yeah.
What? No, I want to see like a piece of candy stuck to the side of your head now.
Obviously. Yeah. That would make the most sense. But I love it. I was really intentional. I'm not a needle fan, which is also part of the thing. I think if I could get over my fear, it would be a lot better. But I went to a piercing person versus like going to Claire's because I just don't know if I would trust them with my body. I went to Ivy Noor in Parker, and they are like one of the top rated. I don't know if I'm too promotional for them, but
no.
I love it so much.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, my middle child, who's also my assistant here, their primary profession is they are a professional piercer, and they don't do like tattooing and piercing. No, they're totally 100% into the piercing, and they work at Ivy Noor.
But you small world,
Jasmine. Yeah.
I know. I honestly had to look up who I went with. I have a couple neighbors who have tons of tattoos and piercings, and they were like, these people are the best. So I just trusted them. But I love it. They were so kind and they were really helpful. And I know every time I've gone in to get like my post shortened, because you get like a longer post, for those who don't know, in case your ear swells, and then over time you're supposed to shorten your post. But they're always like, you could just do another one. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I just like my little one helix piercing. It's simple and basic. And then I just have my, typical ear piercing, and that's about it. But I love that we have this little connection. Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? And I'm so glad that you pointed out going to like a kiosk in the mall or something like
Yeah.
that is not a good choice. And Jasmine would be praising you to the rafters for that. Even for kids, for people who don't know. Anytime
Yeah.
they say, okay, we're just going to pull out the tattoo gun, because of the way those things are designed, there's no way to 100% sterilize that whole tattoo gun because it's got, internal parts and
Or
things.
their piercing gun, right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that's why if you go to a professional piercers, whether through a tattoo shop or just a standalone store, they'll use different instruments that are 100% sterilized fresh every time. They have autoclaves. We're talking it's up to hospital grade sterilizations.
Mhm.
And I know, for example, Jasmine, even when they're working with younger people who might be getting their first piercing, like ever, like
Mhm.
into the children realms, 12 and
Yeah.
11, and they will do a lot to put the client at ease to make sure it's as least traumatic and least painful as possible.
Yeah. It was kind of funny when I got my ear pierced, my helix. I went with my friend. I told you one of my neighbors love them. They have like tons of piercings and tons of tattoos. And she's like the only person I would take a referral from because I know she'll send me to the right person. And she was so sweet. I had her hold my hand and film because I wanted to watch it later, even though it bothered me, but I wanted to be able to see it. And I can't remember who my piercer was. I might have told you before, Donna, but she was so sweet. And she was like, okay, here's what we're doing. And like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And she like walked me through the whole process. And I felt a little silly because I'm an adult, but because in like the next room over, there was like a 10-year-old doing the same thing basically. But they were just so kind and so clear. And they talked about the sterilization. They gave me aftercare tips. I didn't have any infection or anything like that, which I was, nervous about. I didn't want this to deter my life just because I got a piercing.
Yeah.
And I've had, unfortunately, people who just, buy one of those little piercing guns and just do it themselves. And I just couldn't do that. Ugh.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is you got to be aware of your anatomy, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the things Jasmine will consult people on. They're like, oh, I want to do this particular thing, like my belly button. Well, it's like you're an outie. That's not going to work.
I love that. That's funny, but it's true. And they really do take good care of you. And like, they also put a dot on my ear and they helped me like place it exactly where I wanted it. Where I think my ear piercing, I was a child of the 80s, 90s. Like they just took me to Claire's and just did them at the same time. And it's like, who knows if they're even, on my ear compared to being able to actually place it where you want it and make sure that's like where the jewelry is. Also, I love about Ivy Noir is that they use real, genuine jewelry versus like the fake stuff. So you're least likely to have an allergic reaction and things like that.
Yeah. And I can even advise you on that as well.
Yeah.
With somebody with metal allergies, I appreciate.
Oh, yeah. And it's something that people like all the time. You're putting metal through your ear. Like it's really important that you have something that's quality and not just, a random thing.
Yep. Yeah, it pays to do it right the first time.
Exactly.
Just like onboarding. Hey!
Yeah.
All right, Kylie, thank you so much for joining me today. And where can people get in touch with you and your company if they want to reach out and find out more about what y'all do?
Yeah. You can reach out to me, Kylie Dunkley, like slam dunk, the Ley on LinkedIn. And then also our company is Allboarder, which is ALLBOARDER. And we have a website, allboarder.com, and you can reach out to us through there as well or on LinkedIn as well.
Great. Thank you very much. And of course, I'm Donna Shannon. My company is Personal Touch Career Services. And if you like what you've heard here today, please give us a like, give us a follow, maybe even give us a comment. And if you didn't like what we talked about today, just keep it to yourself. The world is mean enough as it is.
Thanks for listening to Tattooed Freaks in Business Suits, produced by the Personal Touch Career Services. Our host is Donna Shannon. All music has been ethically sourced and licensed from sounddogs.com and epidemicsound.com. Support the arts. We certainly do. Join us next time as we continue to explore the evolving world of work and leadership in the United States. If you are interested in being a guest, or if you would like to receive a complimentary career evaluation, please visit the contact page at personaltouchcareerservices.com. Once again, that's personaltouchcareerservices.com. Or you can just Google it.